everybody. Cris is here to give us a dissertation on drones and the broadcaster. And I've been flying now for about what, Cris, 3 years. I'm coming up on my second renewal of drone tests. So I've got to do that in January, starting to do some prep for that. But at this point, I pretty much am ready. I think I could probably go take the test for the Part 107 right now. Feel pretty comfortable with it. I've already gotten an awful lot of use out of my drone, the company's drone, I should say. Looking at towers, analyzing antennas. We discovered a couple of things at one station here earlier this year, and due to the drone originally seeing it, and then we were able to get it repaired with my galvanized Endeavors tower crew. And it's really a useful tool. And I would really encourage everybody who has towers to keep after to look into doing this. Have your company, if not yourself, invest in a drone for that very purpose, because it certainly pays for itself in the first whack or two. Inspecting the tower yourself instead of sending a crew up to see what's wrong. And you practice with it a little bit. And today's drones are very stable. You're able to fly in very close. I can usually, if there's no wind, and even with a little wind, get to definitely within 10 feet, sometimes 5 feet of the point on the tower that you want to look at. And you just, there's a couple of little tricks and tips that you can find out to help you do that. So I really encourage everybody who has to, keep a look at towers and that sort of thing to do it. Get that Part 107 license. It's not that difficult. There's great apps that you can use to do that. So without any further ado or don't, Cris, why don't you pick it up there, and you've got some good stuff to show us.
Well, before I dive in, why don't you announce the election results for our chapter?
Okay. Amanda is going to become the new chairman. And let's see, Bill is going to continue on as treasurer. Did you get a vice chair, Amanda? I don't recall seeing that actually, but I've been super busy the past couple of 3 weeks.
Daniel Hyatt.
Daniel. Okay. Very good. Well, congratulations to them. And Amanda, if I can be of any service, or you have any questions, or there's absolutely anything I can help with, always feel free to call on the past one here, because I've asked Shane a few questions as time goes on. So, and he's available too. So anyway, congratulations. But there you go. There's your new lineup for next year.
All right. I used to be a vice chairman, and I was in charge of drinking, smoking, and card playing. So I guess that's what a vice chairman does. All right. Ba-dum-bum. Sorry. All right, let's get started here. Most of the people on here are Part 107 licensed already, and you guys are already and know a lot about what I'm going to talk about today. But we're recording this, and other folks will see this, so this will be for their benefit as much as our own here. So let me share my screen. Is that working? Can you guys see that? Okay.
Real quick, if you guys want to actually see the whole thing, where you see all of our faces, you can actually hide the thumbnail view. There's a minimize button there to kind of make our faces small, so you can see the screen, the whole screen.
All right. How do you like my subtitle there? Thought some of you guys might get that. Actually, some of you older guys like me. How I learned to stop worrying and love the quadcopter. Well, see if I can make this thing advance here. There we are. It wasn't all that many years ago that drones started making their appearances in the toy aisles. And early models, they really amounted to remote control helicopters. I had a few of those, and they were pretty unstable, and they were just amusements. These evolved into small quadcopters, really toy aircraft with 4 horizontal propellers that were maneuvered with differential thrust. And I had one of those too. At some point, though, a significant technological leap was made, and the GPS and inertial stabilized multi-rotor small unmanned aircraft systems, and that's SUAS and FAA parlance, of today were born. Now, these early models, they had very limited capabilities, but they were very stable. They were easy to fly, and they included such features as automatic return to home and auto land. You could buy gimbals as accessories, and a lot of hobbyists and other users, they equip their aircraft with GoPro or other action cameras, as well as data and video links, so that the camera output could be viewed in real time by the pilot flying the aircraft. In the photo there on this slide, the top right there, that's a Phantom 2 with a ZenMuse 3D gimbal, and that's a GoPro Hero 3. And I've got one of those that I built up. It has a video transmitter on it and all of that. And you know, it was pretty cool for a long time. I still got it. I still fly it. Actually, I dropped it in Willow Creek up in Grand County a couple of years ago, and dried it out, and it all still works. Well, as time went on, integral cameras began appearing, and that's the normal today. Camera resolutions, they increased from 1080 to 2.7K to 4K, and now some 8K models are available. Stunning video and photographs are possible from any of these platforms. Their use and relatively low cost has changed forever what we see on television and other areas of entertainment. I always see the drone shots in television programs and in movies and stuff, especially television programs. And really the two things changed those industries forever. One was the action camera that they'll strap on anything, you know, they'll strap it on something and blow it up. And then the drone, and then you put the two together, and it changed everything. Today, SUAS aircraft are used in all kinds of applications, including law enforcement, disaster response, public safety, mapping, oil field service, news gathering, and live sports. My son-in-law, Amanda's husband, Jordan, he is a professional drone pilot, and he flies in oil field service, inspecting wells, and also doing well strike investigation. When they happen, they send the drone in before they send other people in, depending on the severity. So he gets to fly drones all day long. In recent years, SUAS aircraft have found their way into broadcast engineering in a number of ways. Some enterprising engineers have developed ways to measure VHF and UHF directional antenna radiation patterns with the antennas on the tower and radiating. You know, contrast this with the usual range measurement techniques that require a model or a mock-up of the tower and a turntable with the antenna under test receiving a point source signal. Range measurements, you know, they certainly have their place, but they can't possibly take into account everything that's in the environment of the antenna, like climbing pegs, girts, diagonals, conduits, straps, all of those things. Or even guy wires that may be outside the aperture, but nearby. Because the aircraft and GPS aircraft are GPS guided and are stabilized, it's possible to accurately maintain a fixed distance from the antenna while flying around it. And you can make hundreds, if not thousands, of measurements in a single circuit around the antenna. And multiple circuits can be made at different elevations, providing a very detailed picture of the actual spherical radiation pattern of the antenna with it on the tower. And on this picture here in the upper right, this is courtesy of 6 Arms, and you'll see that they have a log periodic antenna there mounted on top of the drone, and that's the purpose of that one. That's the one they use to do in situ pattern measurements. Another SUAS broadcast engineering application employs infrared photography. We saw Paul Schulens do a webinar on that for the SBE here a couple of months ago. With an IR-equipped aircraft, the tower can be inspected and hotspots along transmission lines, conduits, and antennas can be located, pointing to discontinuities, possible split bullets, and other anomalies that will likely eventually result in a burnout. Antenna heaters can be visually checked with these things for proper operation and uniform heat, which is a huge improvement over the old touch test that we've used for decades. This drone at the bottom of the shot there is an IR equipped drone, and that's what they use that for. Well, both of these and other specialized applications, they often require specially equipped and modified aircraft, such as the two we just saw, sometimes with greater payload and endurance than normal. But there are many uses for less capable, conventionally equipped SUAS aircraft in broadcast engineering, and those are worth exploring. First is tower inspection. See, drones can go where most broadcast engineers can't, most notably up our towers. With their high resolution cameras, they can see details that we would never be able to spot with binoculars, a spotting scope, or even a telescope. For one thing, they can look at a tower straight on and not at a steep angle from below. They can maneuver to look at an area of interest from every angle, below, above, and from either side, or even from behind, looking through the tower structure. The only way to replicate that kind of visibility is to send a man up a tower. And as you guys know, in most cases, the folks we're sending up towers, they don't have much technical expertise. They may look right at a problem without seeing it. Here, a couple of years ago, we had an issue on one of our towers in the Detroit market. And this is a tower that we share with, at the time it was CBS, it's Odyssey now. But the impedance shifted dramatically to the point we couldn't even use the tower. And we sent the drone up, and in just about 15 minutes, we found a quarter wave shorting strap that had come loose and was just hanging. And we spotted it with the drone. We were able to call the tower contractor. They came out, they climbed right to it, and were able to fix it and get us going in very short order. And because this is a large freestanding tower, you know, an inspection by a man, a climber, you know, it's a lot of work. I mean, that tower is 40 feet across at the base, you know, and it's narrower up high, but you know, it's a lot of work to get around all the way around the tower to look at all these things. And yet with the drone, it was no issue at all. A broadcast engineer can look at a tower at the condition of the paint, of the hardware, transmission line hangers, ground connections, fittings, antennas, lights, conduit, and more. And he or she can also inspect guy wires, guy insulators, and top load wires, which even tower climbers can't look at because they're located out in space where the climbers can't go. Todd Dixon is on with us today. Todd is one of our very capable engineers in our great Birmingham engineering department, and we had a guy insulator break on one of our towers here. I guess it was earlier this year, and Todd was able to fly that tower, inspect the guy wires, and he found a number of misrigged guy insulators. So they were held not in compression, but they were rigged so that if the insulator broke, the guy wire would open. And so we were able to get a crew to deal with that. How do you see those kind of things in any other way? You can't send a crew up to inspect a guy wire that's 300 feet in the air and out from the tower 50 or 60 feet. It's an interesting phenomenon that I've personally observed, that having an SUAS aircraft flying up a tower during a paint job often changes the entire dynamic of that paint job, where perhaps otherwise the painters would not be so careful to cover every square inch of the tower with paint, especially the stuff you can't see from the ground, like the tops of flanges and girts and diagonals. If they know you're watching, they'll do a much more thorough job. I've gotten some of the best paint jobs I've ever had once I started inspecting them with drones, and the crew knew that I was doing that. I've also found some of the worst paint jobs looking at a tower after the fact that they didn't know that we were watching. Anyway, the same is true of a transmission line or an antenna installation. If a tower contractor knows you're looking at their work, they'll be more diligent to do things right. And it's sad that you have to do that, but it's just a fact of life. Preparation for tower work is another area where SUAS aircraft can be of great help. Detailed high-resolution photos of the installation location for an antenna can help the tower contractor plan for the job. He can see before anybody goes up the tower what the antenna will mount to, what structural elements might be in the way, and what hardware he needs to supply. And this will save him time and effort, and it'll save the tower owner, the broadcaster, money. Got a video here. This is a shot of a tower here in the Denver area that we changed. We did a lighting change. We went from standard paint and red lights to a dual medium intensity LED strobe system. And we did a very close flight of both towers and the areas of interest, and supplied that to galvanized endeavors before the tower crew, before they ever went up. So they knew exactly what they were dealing with before they started. So anyway, and I shot this video as they were doing the installation. And hopefully you can see the one flash head is mounted there, and they're working on the other one. But they had all the right hardware. They had everything ready to go. Knew exactly what they were getting into before they started. This is at the same site here in Denver area. This is an 11 gigahertz 4-foot dish. We replaced the dish, replaced the radios, and I shot this video immediately after they completed the installation, so I could see if they left anything loose. And by the way, this is just a short clip of the video. I went all the way around. I looked at every nut, every bolt, every wire, the radio itself. I looked at everything, but I was able to get pretty close and see what was what, and I could tell that they did a really good job on that. Material delivery is another use for drones in broadcast engineering. You know, oftentimes a worker on a tower, he'll find out that he doesn't have with him a particular tool or piece of hardware he needs to complete the task that he's working on up there. And if he hasn't rigged the tower with a load line or a rope to the ground, that means that either he has to climb down to retrieve the item, or someone has to climb up. Either way, it takes significantly more time and effort. An SUAS aircraft can be used to make on-tower delivery of such items that are within the aircraft's payload capacity. Generally speaking, hand tools can be easily handled, and oftentimes connectors and hardware can also be accommodated. And we'll talk a little more about that here in just a few minutes. But this photo here, you'll see a video that this came from earlier, and this is a photo of an on-tower delivery of I believe it was a connector that we, yeah, I know that's exactly what it was. It was a connector that we had to send up because the tower worker broke the one that he had, or dropped it. I can't recall, but I'll show you the video that came from here in just a few minutes. You know, it's sometimes necessary to map a tower in preparation for antenna range measurements or structural analysis. In the former case, it's important to know the configuration of the tower and where every conduit, girt, and diagonal are. And an SUAS can provide that information with high-resolution photos. The same is true for structural analysis. If no as-built drawings of the tower exist, which is often the case if the tower is old or the manufacturer is no longer in business, or if the tower has changed hands multiple times. Because it's possible with a GPS-guided SUAS to maintain a fixed distance from the tower, it can be flown up or down each tower face while taking photos and video, maintaining a fixed distance all the way. Measurements of leg and other structural member dimensions near the bottom can then be used to determine the scale on the photos, and a model of the structure can be very accurately produced. We had a tower in Detroit, it was a pretty old tower, and we put a translator antenna on it. I had no idea of the manufacturer. I didn't know anything about the tower other than its height, but we were able to use this method. We sent a drone straight up it at a fixed distance of about 3 feet and took video and a series of still pictures. Then we made some leg, caliper measurements at the bottom. And now we had a scale and we could scale everything. And I was able to give that to the structural engineer that did a structural analysis to tell us that, yes, this tower is good to support this transmission line and this translator antenna. While hobbyists can purchase the SUAS of their choice and fly it without being FAA licensed under certain conditions, broadcast engineers can't do this in connection with their employment because it constitutes a commercial activity or use. And as such, broadcast engineers wishing to use an SUAS aircraft at work, they need to become FAA licensed under Part 107 of the FAA rules. Now, getting licensed requires some study of the FAA rules, airspace, weather, procedures, and other topics, followed by a written test, usually given by an FAA authorized contractor, often a flight school or test center. Here in the Denver area, the ATC Flight School out at Centennial Airport gives those tests. Now, while this material is not particularly difficult, neither is it particularly intuitive. There's a good bit of just rote memorization required, particularly with respect to the rules and the airspace. Now, those studying for their Part 107 test, they often ask, well, why do I need to know some of this material that would not seem to have any application to flying a 3-pound quadcopter? Well, the short answer is the same remote pilot certificate or license that allows you to fly that 3-pound quadcopter will also let you fly a much larger aircraft up to 55 pounds and with much greater speed. And so the license is all encompassing when it comes to these things. And so you need to know a lot of this stuff in the off chance that you may end up flying one of those things someday. Now, there are many online courses and apps available to help a person prepare for the test. And one of the best around, one that we recommend, is remotepilot101.com, which is part of m0a.com, which is a flight school, national flight school. They work with you and they guarantee you to pass the FAA test. And then they also help you to stay current with refresher courses. Now, for those that are already a licensed pilot, fixed wing or rotary wing, have a private or commercial pilot's license, the path to a Part 107 license is really easy. You just take the FAA's online course for Part 61 pilots and have a certified flight instructor sign off in ACRA, the FAA's online pilot licensing system. Once you pass that exam, you're good for 2 years, whether you've got it as a regular pilot or you got it as a newbie to the Part 107. And then after that, as Jack mentioned a few minutes ago, once every 24 months, you have to take a recurrent online course from the FAA, and you have to ace the exam. And this serves to keep your knowledge fresh and update you on rule changes. And the really cool thing about this is it's all online. You do have to get 100 on the test, but you can just keep doing it until you do. You will get it right. So you don't really need to study for it in advance, I guess is what I'm saying. You just go online, take the course, take the test. So once you pass the FAA Part 107 exam, you're good for 2 years. And after that, once every 24 months, you have to take a recurrent online course from the FAA and ace the exam. And this serves to keep your knowledge fresh and update you on rule changes. Now, one example of a recent rule change is that the FAA will now allow, under certain circumstances and with certain limitations, SUAS aircraft to fly at night. This was formerly prohibited except by special waiver. The latest rule revision also allows, under certain circumstances, flight over people, which was also previously prohibited. And I learned about both of those things during the refresher course. I can't really think of a good reason for one of us to do a tower inspection at night, but then again, you never know. One other good thing about having your Part 107 remote pilot certificate is you can use it outside of broadcast engineering. If you're asked, for example, to shoot an outdoor wedding or event for compensation, you could do that. You could also provide aerial photos and videos for real estate transactions, websites, or whatever for hire. It's the remote SUAS pilot's responsibility to know in which type of airspace he or she intends to fly, as well as being aware of any and all temporary flight restrictions, NOTAMs, and other information that could affect a flight. There are a good number of helpful apps that can be used to gather this information. Among them, SkyVector, VFR Map, AirMap. AirMap's the one I primarily use, and in fact, this screenshot here on the slide is from AirMap. And those two circles that you see there, one to the south, one to the northeast, those are class deltas from Centennial Airport to the south and Buckley Air Force Base to the east northeast. And you also see those numbers in the grid squares there. And you see that in those outer grid squares north of Centennial, you can fly up to 400 feet. In those others around Buckley, you can fly around or fly 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, depending on which grid you're in. Very helpful application there. Some of the apps can be used to file a flight plan and request clearance in the FAA's LAANC system. Stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability System, for a particular flight that you wish to make in controlled airspace, such as near a controlled airport. I'd hope to get Jack to talk about that a little bit, because he does it frequently. He has several sites that are actually inside some airspace, Class E airspace, that he has to get a clearance to fly in, and he uses AirMap to do that. Weather can also be checked at the FAA's 1-800-WXBrief.com flight service website. I put that up on the screen here for you. That not a link, but the URL. It's required by the FAA rules that the remote pilot gather all information available about a flight before making that flight. And that includes not just the airspace and flight restrictions and so forth, but also weather conditions, including ceiling, visibility, and wind. And while all those parameters are important, wind can have a significant effect on SUAS aircraft. Be sure and know the maximum wind capability of your aircraft, and that the forecast winds are well below that value before taking off. Now, this requires a little math, because typically these maximum wind values for these aircraft are given in feet per second, not in miles per hour. So you have to do a little conversion to figure that out, figure out what that number is for your aircraft. But be sure you know what that is, and that the forecast winds are well below that value before taking off. Also knowing that there may be significant winds in the area will prepare you for shorter battery life, and as a result, shorter flights. You need to be prepared for that. Battery life specifications are zero wind specifications. And if there's any wind at all, it's going to shorten your battery life. There are SUAS aircraft available for most any budget, but the best advice is to purchase the most capable aircraft that the budget can stand. Now, DJI is the most popular and most prolific brand, with models from the Mavic Mini up through large SUAS aircraft capable of supporting cinematic cameras. At the consumer end are the aforementioned Mini, the Phantom in several variations, and the Mavic in several types. Most engineers will find the Phantoms and the Mavics to be perfect for broadcast work. I think the Mini is not really very well suited to it for a number of reasons. It can fly in a lot less wind. And also it's very easy to lose sight of the thing because it's so small, especially against a tower structure. There are other manufacturers out there and their offerings are worth looking at, but beware of knockoffs that look just like popular DJI models that are priced at a fraction of the cost of similar DJI products. Like everything else, you get what you pay for. As I was putting this together, I had a Facebook ad pop up on the feed, and I clipped it and put it here at the bottom of the screen. It says, this $255 black GPS 4K drone 106 Pro with gimbal and electronic image stabilization just dropped its price to $69. You get what you pay for, folks. Although there may be some argument that it might be good to have a $69 drone if you're going to be sending it in somewhere that you have a high probability you might lose the doggone thing. You would cry a whole lot less over a $69 drone than you would a $3,000 one. Just as with any skill, practice makes perfect. Before running an SUAS up a tower, practice extensively in the clear, becoming familiar with the aircraft and how it behaves. Learn how fast, how quickly it responds to control inputs and how quickly it responds to wind gusts. Practice flying close to a tower base so you know what that looks and feels like, watching all the on-screen indicators for clues such as distance to the tower. Learn how the obstacle avoidance systems work and practice using them. I like to do this by flying close to a utility pole guy wire that's near the ground, so I can see how the aircraft responds and whether its obstacle avoidance sensors can see the wire. This will tell you a lot of what you can expect flying close to a guy wire 400 feet above your head. And by the way, some of us on this that are in this meeting right now know, I won't mention any names, that there is no obstacle avoidance looking up. There's obstacle avoidance all the way around on most of these models and obstacle avoidance on the underside, but there's nothing on top. And so it's pretty easy to climb into a guy wire and there won't be any warning about it. So you need to really be aware where those things are. If you plan to do any payload deliveries, practice making deliveries close to the ground so you know how to manage payload line swing and how the additional weight affects the aircraft performance. Practice lifting items of differing weights to see what the aircraft is capable of lifting safely. Being aware that handling and battery life will be significantly different with a load than without. The trick here is to employ a payload line of some sort with quick disconnect clip or clamp of some sort. I learned this and came up with a system that works great. I use binder clips from Office Supply on each end, and one to clip to the aircraft landing gear and the other to clip to the payload. Those clips weigh next to nothing and they hold securely, and they're very easily opened with gloved hands. So the tower worker doesn't have to pull his glove off to retrieve the payload. Now, if the worker's near the top of the tower, the best way to make the on-tower delivery is to have him climb to the top, then take the aircraft with its load hanging below over the top of the tower. The worker can then reach up and retrieve the item. Now, if the worker is not near the top of the tower, the aircraft is flown to a point 10 or so feet above the worker and beside the tower. Then carefully fly toward the tower and hover about 3 or so feet out. No need to get any closer than that. The worker can then reach out and snag the payload line and then retrieve the item. Now, here's a caution. After the delivery, descend at a relatively slow rate so that the payload line remains vertical. You do not want it getting wound up in a prop, because really ugly things will happen then. And finally, I would advise flying on the lee side of a tower whenever possible, especially when doing a payload drop. Wind gusts can blow an aircraft into the tower much more quickly than the GPS can detect the movement, and the flight control system can counteract it. Don't ask me how I know this. Thankfully, the aircraft survived when I had one blow into a tower more quickly than it could correct, or I could correct for it. So in windy conditions, maintain a greater distance from the tower or the guy wires. I got a couple of videos I want to show you right quick. These were some of you folks may recognize Derek Jackson here, who's a broadcast engineer and tower climber. And he is on top of one of the KLZ towers. And I can't remember what he needed up there. Maybe Amanda remembers. But he was going to have to climb down and get it. And we said, well, wait a minute. Let's see if we can come up with something, a way to send this up on the drone and save him climbing 800 feet. And we did, and we sent it up and it worked. So here's the video. And yes, that is Derek's cell phone on top of the beacon there on the tower. By the way, this is before I started using binder clips. I had just used a slip knot here onto a baggie. But hey, it worked. So he climbed about 10 feet up to the top of the tower, pulled the slip knot, and he has the item right there in his hand. Problem solved. Now, this happened later. This was on another microwave installation at a different site. And this guy, this is the one I showed you the picture of earlier. In this one, we had used our binder clip thing. And by the way, Jordan Hopp, Amanda's husband, who's a pro at this, I handed him the controller and I said, you're a better pilot at this than I am. And so he took it in and did this. So this was this wasn't Derek. This was another tower contractor. This was actually 3DB Networks tower crew that was working. And just like that, he's got the item and away we go. Small unmanned aircraft systems have many potential uses in broadcast engineering. Employing SUAS aircraft can help the broadcast engineer do his or her job better and faster and save the station owner a significant amount of money. It can also result in greater safety by better preparing tower workers for a climb or eliminating the need for some tower climbs altogether. Getting licensed and equipped is worthwhile in many cases, including and especially for the contract engineer who can offer a whole new level of service to his clients. So do your homework, study, get licensed, and practice flying. Your investment will pay off in many different ways going forward. And that's it, folks.
Very nice.
And every one of you guys on here is a licensed Part 107 pilot. So I was preaching to the choir. But the recording will be seen by a lot of folks that weren't. The recording's still going there, Amanda?
Yes, it is.
So Todd, do you have anything to maybe to add to any of this? You'll need to unmute your audio before you talk there.
Yeah, the only thing I'd mention is that, one of the things that's coming up is going to be the remote ID stuff that is coming online within the next year or so. Most of the guys that I watch on YouTube and stuff that talk about it, and, they refer to 3 or 4 years ago as kind of the wild, wild west, where people could just fly wherever they wanted to. And, or they were doing stuff that the FAA really hadn't gotten a hold of yet, but the remote ID is going to change that to some extent. And so I would just say it's, even if you're just trying to be even if you're a hobbyist, it's better to just go ahead and get the license anyway to get, to have that, because that's where everything is being pushed toward is the, with the remote ID is having that knowledge about what the license gives you and the knowledge it gives, that you have to know to pass the test. So.
For you Crawford guys, we're watching closely what DJI and others are going to do, because obviously we have a big investment. These Phantom 4 Pros that you guys fly, these are several $1,000s. And we're not just going to toss them in the recycle bin. Someone, if not DJI, is going to come out with either through some sort of software update to employ equipment or systems already on board, DSP already on board to facilitate the remote ID, or someone is going to make a very lightweight stick-on remote ID module.
Some kind of beacon or something.
Yeah, something like that. And for instance, the nighttime flying, you have to have a beacon. You have to be able to see it for 3 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Have to have a flashing light. And
Right.
Naturally, I had to get one because I had to fly at night. Not because I need to, but just because I can. And so
you can do it in a real plane. You need to do it in a quadcopter.
Doggone right. And so I bought one of those, and it just Velcros on. I just Velcro it on if I want to fly at night, turn the thing on, and don't look at it. You got to be careful not to look at it before you launch, or you won't have any night vision. But I suspect that something very similar, we'll start seeing those come out as aftermarket devices that we can purchase and affix to the aircraft,
right,
as we go forward. Rick, do you have anything to add to any of this? You've been flying for a while. You'll need to unmute before you talk. There you go. There you are.
The thing I've used it most for, that I find the most useful beyond just inspecting, the towers and that, is when I'm looking to get a tower crew involved, I can go out ahead of time and take pictures and show them exactly, this is what I want you to replace, or this is what I want you to do, and they have a better idea that might help them make a better bid quote, So, and at the very least, as you mentioned, they know what to expect as far as tools, connectors, that sort of thing.
Very good. Very, very good. Mike, you're the new guy here. Mike just joined our ranks as a licensed Part 107 pilot, and I sent him a Phantom 4 Pro Plus, and he's been practicing with it a little bit. I hope you haven't been chasing wildlife or doing anything, looking in your neighbor's windows or anything fun like that.
I can't fly it around my house. This is military airspace.
Yeah, it's interesting because Amanda and I both live, she's about 3 miles north of me, but we're both inside the Class Delta of Buckley Air Force Base.
Yeah.
She is in a no-fly zone. I am in a 200-foot zone. So I can actually fly right here in my driveway, but she's a little closer to the actual center of the base. But
yeah, we're surface, so I can't even. I can't even start it up and hover it over my driveway without technically busting airspace. So
Well, let's not do that.
I
You got any
haven't done that.
questions?
So,
You got any questions for these guys that have been doing it a long time?
well, yeah. The first thing that comes to my mind is how do you get up the nerve to fly it so close to things? Because I've taken it up a couple of times, and you know, down in Monroe where it's golf airspace, and you know, getting it anywhere near the tower makes me very uneasy. So, and you know, it's just because I can vision. I've seen enough YouTube videos of these things falling out of the sky after they, you know, hit something. And there's really there's a lot of avian activity around there. So it I kind of have to keep my eyes out for some pretty large birds that are in that area.
Well, let me throw in a couple of things here right quick, and then it looks like Rick is dying to say something.
Oh, no, I was gonna tell Mike that getting up the nerve, our Lansing Tower location, about 300 feet or so away from one of the busiest highways, up on an elevated platform in the United States, 8094. And that always takes a little bit of nerve, because I'm like, if this thing goes, it goes in front of some 18-wheeler and I'm responsible for a multi-car accident. Wow. That's always in my mind when I'm flying there.
Well, I guess it should be, right?
Yes.
That's a good point. It should be. We need to be aware of all the hazards, and you know, we need to take precautions. Well, I would say first rule, Mike, is don't run into things. Okay.
That doesn't help.
Okay. Now, seriously, you use the distance measuring on the, you know, on your screen. Watch that closely. You'll know how far you are from the tower. Second thing is use a spotter. Have Steve standing right under the tower, looking straight up. You can be out from it a ways, but as long as you can communicate with him, and if you're getting too close or something, he can yell at you, because he can see looking straight up that, oh my gosh, you're about to hit the tower. So, you know, you got to trust that person. I don't know if you trust Steve or not, but you know,
Sure.
The other,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
the other thing you said is very real. Avian, we have had hawks come after these things to where they perceive you as an intruder in their airspace, in their territory, and come after you. And you can't outrun them, I don't think. At least you can't accelerate as fast as they can. They'll be coming at you so fast before you even know they're coming. You know, it's another good reason to have a spotter there with you that's not just looking straight up, but keeping an eye on everything else, watching for that eagle, for that. We have eagles around here, you know, and watch for those things to come get you. So anyway, good point about the avian activity.
As good as as good as that technology is, their avionics are better.
They are.
Yeah, what makes me, I'm sorry, what makes me a little bit nervous about the birds is, you know, if one of them were to get close enough that they made contact with it, I think that the drone itself probably would not recover.
Right. And that's where you tell Steve, catch it, catch it.
Yeah.
Well,
you know,
and I'll just say that there's no bigger pit in your stomach when that happens either, when you actually just hit something and watching it fall from the sky. So,
I can imagine.
But we were fortunate. There's a place really close to us that in Birmingham that does repair work. So even though I hated that I hit that guy wire, they did really good work on it. So
yeah, they were able to save it, and you know, it's a lesson learned, and you know, and for what it's worth, Todd was inspecting guy wires at the time,
right,
and that's why I said there is no obstacle avoidance sensors on the top of the aircraft,
right.
so you can come right up under a wire, and it's hard to it's hard to see those things in a three-dimensional, view, because you're looking at a wire in space and you can't really tell where your aircraft is. So my advice would be to come up between the wires and then fly horizontally toward the wire.
Right.
If you're going to look at it, as opposed to coming up under it, sort of in the same vertical plane as the wire.
And I'd say it's easier to, it's easy to get, it's easy to get turned around from where, your sticks are actually going,
Yes.
and it's
Mhm.
hard. I mean, so what you were saying about practicing lower to the ground, where you're familiar with when you turn a stick one way, what you're looking at, that kind of thing. I mean, it really helps to, there's a dimensional thing that goes on in your head when you've done it a couple times and have really practiced making those turns and using the same stick motions to go to the right instead of to the left or wherever else.
Yeah, when it's facing you, the controls are reversed.
Right. Right.
I've done that. I've flown right into trees doing that, thinking, oh, I'm getting close to that tree. I need to get away from it. And I put the stick the wrong way.
Right.
Yeah, go right into it.
Go right into it. Fortunately, I was, didn't hurt anything, but anyway, it can happen. All right. Well, it's getting late. Anybody got anything else they want to add here? Any other comments or questions?
No.
I think to
appreciate the time.
answer Mike's question, I mean, just practice. I'm still in the same boat as you are. I actually haven't flown any towers because I'm still super uncomfortable, but I can see how Cris does it and then how even my husband does it. And yeah, Jordan can fly circles around everybody with the drone because he does it every day, all day long. So
Right.
practice.
Yeah.
Which is why I
Does he
handed him the controller that day when we did the parts delivery to the
Parts
tower.
drop.
Yeah, here, you do it.
Do you find it easier to control the drone by looking at the video on your screen or by watching the drone in the air?
You need to learn, you need to discipline yourself to watch the screen.
Oh, okay. I was thinking you might say the opposite.
No.
Because I prefer looking at the screen.
Yeah, you need to look at the screen. You need to keep the drone within VLOS, a visual line of sight. And, especially you have a white cloudy sky like they have in Birmingham every day, you can sure lose those phantoms against the clouds.
Yeah.
Fortunately, here in Colorado, it's blue sky every day nearly, and we can generally see it. But that's what your spotter's for. Let your spotter watch the drone while you watch the screen. And just trust him. That's really what you got to do. And I do
Makes you
that
wonder why
As far as cameras, as far as the camera goes too, there's a jog dial on the gimbal to turn the camera down somewhat, because a lot of times you'll find that you're looking right into the sun or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you can get up a little higher and look down and change the angle of your camera, that really helps you'll see the picture on your screen clear up really well.
Yeah, and turn the auto iris on.
Yeah, that's right.
That was off on mine when I got it.
Well, I didn't do it.
I probably did. I don't know. I might have done it.
All right, guys, I know it's late. I thank you.
So I know you guys aren't part of our chapter, but I'll just do a quick closing for our chapter. So we apologize for the technical difficulties. Hopefully this video is helpful to you. Just check the SMPTE-SBE 48.org website for updates for the November meeting. And then we'll be taking December off and then start meeting back online in January. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being
Bye.
here, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.